Before we finish the first week of content, I want to set a few key concepts in place that we'll keep returning to. Some questions that people might think of when they're discussing entrepreneurship and thinking about what it is. One of them is, what's the difference between entrepreneurship and small business? Are they the same thing? And the answer is there is a lot of overlap, because obviously entrepreneurship, if it involves starting something new, means it usually involves starting small. There are very few ventures that can actually start at global scale. Some of them can, but they're rare. So the difference is more on emphasis. And here are a few ways in which entrepreneurship generally differs from small business. First of all, the amount of wealth creation is larger. Entrepreneurship aims to get bigger and create more money, more jobs, more impact. Small business is usually content to stay small. So it might be a single shop, a single restaurant, a location in one city, something that can be managed by maybe a handful of people, maybe 30 people, but not something that's going to involve hundreds. The speed of growth in entrepreneurship tends to be fast. Now, to some extent, we're talking about the high growth entrepreneurs, so don't be too put off by that. Everybody has to start somewhere. And a lot of entrepreneurs who actually develop high growth businesses have started very small and learnt some lessons from their early ventures. Small business, on the other hand, tends to grow slowly, or it plateaus off early. So it gets to a certain size that the owner's comfortable with, and it stays there for as long as it can. We're going to talk a bit about risk. We won't cover it too much in this subject, but you'll come back to it later. A lot of people think that entrepreneurs are risk takers. Funnily enough, if you talk to entrepreneurs, they'll often say that they're not risk takers, they're risk managers. But the fact is that they are motivated by the opportunity rather than the problems. So they will always be prepared to take on what other people perceive as a higher risk, because what they're focused on is the opportunity and, if you like, the prize, the reward. Whereas small businesses are quite vulnerable. If you're small, then you can be at risk of your business failing because of changes in the economy, because one of your major customers goes bust, one of your major suppliers goes bust, the law changes, whatever. So small businesses tend to be quite conservative so that they are not vulnerable to these changes. And finally, innovation. Entrepreneurship tends to play in the area which is not much trodden before. In other words, new territory. Some of you may have heard of blue ocean strategy. If not, you'll come across it later on. So what entrepreneurs tend to look for is, what are the problems that aren't being solved? Or what are the problems that are supposedly being solved, but their solutions really aren't very good? And how can we do it better? Let's get creative. Let's do something different, because what's already there is not working that well. Small business can be a bit same old, same old. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't need every hairdresser to be entrepreneurial. We don't need the people who mend your car when it's broken down to be entrepreneurial. Small business has its place and it has its value. And many small businesses may have started out as entrepreneurial. It's the question of what happens after that. So we'd encourage you to start small but think big. Test the waters on something small, but think about how big it could be if you took it to its full potential. Question for any business, whether entrepreneurial or not, and we will keep on coming back to this, so you'll be bored of hearing it, but I hope it stays with you at the end of the subject. What is the problem you're trying to solve? One of the reasons some businesses fail, many businesses fail, especially entrepreneurial businesses, is because they have a solution in search of a problem. You can have clever technology that can do really smart things, but if it doesn't solve a problem that people are interested in having solved and paying for having solved, it's not going to get you far in building a business. So we advise you, in fact, we will insist that you start with the problem that you're trying to solve, because that's the source of customers, and customers are the lifeblood of businesses. By the end of the unit, I really hope you'll understand why we keep emphasizing this. I'm just going to show you here a model of entrepreneurship. There's a lot going on there. This comes from Timon's new venture creation, and it's also in the Bygrave and Zacharakis text that we use for this subject. You'll see it around quite a lot. And there's a lot going on there, but you'll see that it's suggesting that the founder is carrying out a balancing act with the team, the people they're working with, the opportunity that they're trying to pursue, the resources they need to pursue that. And there's a lot of ideas in this, but I'm going to highlight just 3 of them for now. One is ambiguity. As I said before, it's not always clear what the right answer is. It's not always clear what things mean. It's not always clear what customers want, even if they tell you. They don't necessarily describe it, or they don't necessarily know what they want. So there's uncertainty. There's uncertainty on how many people will want to buy what you're selling, on how much they're prepared to pay for it, on whether the demand is going to grow fast or slow or not at all. So those are all things that you have to be prepared to deal with in entrepreneurship. And over on the right-hand side, there's this thing called exogenous forces. Exogenous just means they come from the outside. And the simple way to express that is stuff happens. And you can't control it, but you have to be prepared to adapt to it. So one of the things that entrepreneurs need to get good at is being resilient and able to respond to change. After this video, you'll find a link to 3 videos which talk about data that makes you think about your place in the world. The original version was made in 2008. There's an updated version in 2014, and somebody has gone as far as to try and predict what the future will be in 2028. It's actually worth watching all 3, especially the difference between 2008 and 2014, and seeing what things have emerged in those 6 years and what things have disappeared. So watch at least one of them and ask yourself, how did they make you think differently about the world we live in? And what business opportunities do they suggest to you? And once again, there's a link to a blog entry. Again, I look forward to seeing what you write.